The unexpected mercy. The crystal walls of Princess Lyra's command ship shattered like fallen stars. Emergency lights painted the bridge in angry red as the ethereal empire's most advanced warship died around her. Through the chaos of sparking consoles and screaming alarms, she watched the human vessels close in like predators sensing wounded prey. Lyra had heard the stories. Every child of the ethereal empire knew what happened when the barbaric humans took prisoners. They spoke of slave markets, of beings forced to fight in gladiatorial arenas, of minds broken and spirits crushed under the boot of human cruelty. The humans were savages who had clawed their way to the stars through violence and conquest. Her crystalline skin glowed faintly blue with fear as she stood on the bridge, her flowing robes torn and stained with the phosphorescent blood of her fallen crew. The ceremonial crown that marked her as third daughter of the ethereal emperor felt heavy on her head, a golden target that would surely seal her fate. Humans valued royal prisoners above all others. The main viewport showed the approaching human flagship, a massive vessel of dark metal and brutal angles. No elegance, no beauty, just raw functional power. The ship's name was etched in harsh human letters across its hull. Defiant. How typical of their aggressive nature. "Your Highness," her dying captain wheezed, his voice barely audible over the dying ship's groans. "The escape pods ... You could still." "No," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the terror in her heart. "A princess of the ethereal empire does not abandon her people." She looked at the handful of surviving crew members, their faces pale with shock and defeat. "We face this together." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic shriek that echoed through the dying ship. Lyra closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to the crystal spirits, asking only that her death be quick and that her people might remember her with honor. The airlock hissed open, and they came, but instead of the howling barbarians she expected. The humans moved with disciplined precision. They wore dark uniforms and carried weapons with practiced ease, but their faces were calm, professional. At their head walked a man who commanded attention without effort. Captain Marcus Chon was not what Lyra had expected. He was tall and lean, with short black hair and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His uniform was simple but clean, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned his authority through skill rather than fear. He stopped before her, his dark eyes meeting her luminous blue ones. For a moment, the bridge fell silent, except for the sound of dying systems and her own racing heartbeat. "Princess Lyra of the ethereal empire," he said, his voice calm and respectful. "I am Captain Marcus Chun of the Human Federation vessel Defiant. I accept your surrender." Lyra lifted her chin, drawing on every lesson in royal dignity she had ever learned. "I am ready to die, human, but I ask mercy for my surviving crew. They are not combatants." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Surprise? Respect? "No one is dying today, Your Highness. You and your people will be treated according to the laws of honorable warfare." "Laws?" Lyra couldn't hide her confusion. "What laws do savages follow?" "A slight smile touched Marcus's lips, but it wasn't mocking. "The same laws that compel a princess to stay with her dying crew instead of fleeing to safety. Honor exists in many forms, Princess." He turned to his soldiers. "Medical teams to the wounded. Escort the survivors to guest quarters on Deck 7. Comfortable quarters," he emphasized, his tone brooking no argument. "Guest quarters?" Lyra's voice cracked slightly. "You mean cells. I mean guest quarters." Marcus stepped closer, his hands clasped behind his back in a gesture that seemed more thoughtful than threatening. "Princess, I understand your fear. Our species have been enemies for 3 generations. But you are not a slave. You are a prisoner of war, and you will be treated with the dignity your rank deserves." The medical teams moved among her crew with gentle efficiency, tending wounds, and offering comfort. Lyra watched in amazement as human soldiers helped her people, their actions contradicting everything she had been taught about their nature. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Understanding takes time," Marcus said quietly. "For now, let me show you to your quarters. We have much to discuss." He led her through the corridors of the human ship, and Lyra was struck by what she saw. The walls were metal and functional. Yes, but they were also clean and well-maintained. Crew members moved with purpose and discipline. But she heard laughter from one passage, saw a group of young humans playing some kind of game during their break. "Your ship is not what I expected," she said as they walked. "What did you expect?" "Filth, chaos, suffering." She paused. "The stories we were told ... were the same stories your people told mine," Marcus said. "That the ethereal empire was a civilization of cruel tyrants who viewed other species as insects to be crushed. That your crystal cities were built on the bones of slaves." Lyra stopped walking. "That's not true. We are a peaceful people who only fight to defend ourselves." "Are we not having this conversation because your fleet attacked our mining colony on Kepler 442? Marcus asked gently. That was different. Our intelligence said you were building weapons there, a threat to our people. We were mining rare crystals to power our medical facilities. Our intelligence said your fleet was preparing to attack our civilian populations." They looked at each other in the corridor, the weight of understanding settling between them. Lyra felt something crack inside her chest, a certainty that had shaped her entire worldview. "We've been lied to," she said softly. "Both of us," Marcus agreed. "The question is, what do we do about it?" Her quarters were indeed comfortable, spacious and well-appointed, with a viewport that showed the stars. A small table held fresh fruit and clean water, and soft fabrics covered the sleeping area. It was better than many noble accommodations she had experienced. "Why?" she asked as Marcus prepared to leave. "Why treat me this way? Your people could gain much from humiliating an ethereal princess." Marcus turned back, his expression serious. "Because strength isn't measured by how we treat those who can defend themselves. It's measured by how we treat those who cannot. I am your enemy. You are a person," he said simply, "and persons deserve dignity." Over the following days, Lyra found herself in a strange new world. She was allowed to move freely through most of the ship, always accompanied by a respectful guard, who seemed more like a guide than a jailer. She ate meals with the senior officers, participated in discussions about philosophy and art, and slowly began to see the humans as something more than the monsters of her nightmares. Marcus visited her daily, bringing reports of the war, updates on her crew's well-being, and increasingly deep conversations about their respective cultures. She learned that humans valued courage, loyalty, and sacrifice above all else. They had concepts of honor that rivaled those of her own people. "Tell me about your family," Marcus said one evening as they stood before the viewport, watching the stars wheel past. "My father is the emperor, wise and just. My mother died when I was young, but she taught me that true nobility comes from service to others." Lyra's voice grew soft. "My sisters are brilliant and brave. They serve the empire in their own ways. You speak of them with great love." "Yes, they are my heart." She looked at him curiously. "What of your family?" Marcus's expression grew distant. "I had a wife once, Elena. She was a teacher on the colony world of New Shanghai. She believed that education could bridge any gap between peoples. That understanding was the key to peace." She died in a raid 3 years ago. Ethereal forces attacked the school where she taught. She was trying to protect her students. Lyra's blood turned to ice. I'm sorry. I had no idea that ... How could you?" Marcus asked, his voice without accusation. Just as I had no idea that ethereal children were taught to sing crystal songs to comfort the dying, or that your people plant memorial gardens for fallen enemies. Asterisk. We do, Lyra whispered. It is our way. Elena would have liked that, Marcus said. She would have said that any people who honor their enemies' dead are worth trying to understand. The breakthrough came during the 3rd week of her captivity. Long-range sensors detected a massive fleet approaching, but neither human nor ethereal. The ships were dark and angular, covered in biological growths that pulsed with sickly light. The Devourers, Lyra breathed when she saw the tactical display on the bridge. They're real. Marcus stood beside her, his face grim. Your people know of them? Stories, legends, a race that consumes entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty. Space behind, she turned to him, fear bright in her eyes. My people thought they were myths. They're not myths, Marcus said. We've been fighting them for 6 months. They've already consumed 4 of our outer colonies. That's why our fleets have been so active in this sector. We weren't preparing to attack your people. We were trying to build a defensive line. And our movements, our increased military presence, made us think you were preparing for war. Meanwhile, the real threat was building in the dark between stars. The Devourer fleet was massive, easily outnumbering both human and ethereal forces in the region. Their ships moved with a horrible organic grace, like living things swimming through the void. We need to warn your people, Marcus said, turning to his communications officer. Open a channel to the ethereal fleet. Sir, they'll think it's a trap, not if their princess vouches for us. Marcus looked at Lyra. Will you speak for us? Lyra stared at the approaching nightmare on the screen. Everything she had believed about humans, about the war, about the universe itself, had been turned upside down. But one thing remained clear. The creatures approaching would consume everything in their path unless someone stopped them. Yes, she said, I will speak for you. The communication link crackled to life, and suddenly she was looking at Admiral Leshen, her father's most trusted commander. His crystalline features were stern with suspicion. Princess Lyra, we have come to retrieve you from the barbarians. Admiral, she said, her voice steady and clear, I speak with the voice of the Crystal Throne. These humans are not our enemies. The true threat approaches from the void. You must listen to Captain Shun. What followed was the longest hour of Lyra's life. She stood between 2 fleets, translating not just words, but entire concepts of honor, duty, and sacrifice. She saw her people's shock as they realized the humans had treated her with dignity, and she saw the humans' amazement as they learned of ethereal philosophy and culture. By the end of that hour, 2 species that had been enemies for 3 generations were preparing to stand together against the darkness. Asterisk. The crown of partnership, the battle for the Kepler system, began at dawn. Ship time. The combined human and ethereal fleets moved as one, their different technologies creating a devastating synergy. Human kinetic weapons punched through Devourer armor, while ethereal energy shields protected both species' ships from the enemy's bioweapons. Lyra stood on the bridge of the Defiant, no longer a prisoner, but a strategic advisor. She wore a modified human uniform that bore both the insignia of her rank and the colors of her people. Beside her, Marcus commanded the fleet with calm precision, his tactical genius evident in every order. Ethereal squadrons, focus your crystal lances on the bionodes, Lyra spoke into the communication array. Human destroyers, follow up with kinetic strikes to the weakened sections. The Devourer ships screamed as they died, their biohulls rupturing and spilling toxic atmosphere into space. But for every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The fleet was vast, a living tide of death that stretched across the star system. They're trying to reach the inhabited worlds, Marcus said, his voice tight with strain. If they break through ... they won't. Lyra's hand found his arm, a gesture of support that surprised them both. We won't let them. The battle raged for hours. Ships on both sides fell to the enemy's weapons, their crews sacrificing themselves to protect the innocent. Lyra watched young humans die alongside ancient ethereal warriors, their blood mixing. In the void, as they fought for a future neither species could achieve alone. "Princess," came a voice over the communication array. It was Admiral Veshin, his ship damaged but still fighting. "The enemy is concentrating their forces against the planet. We cannot hold them." Lyra looked at the tactical display, her heart sinking. The Admiral was right. Despite their courage and cooperation, the combined fleet was being overwhelmed. In minutes, the Devourers would break through to the inhabited worlds below. "There is a way," she said quietly. "The crystal resonance." Marcus turned to her, his eyes questioning. "What is the crystal resonance?" "A weapon of last resort. My people can link their life force through the crystals in their ships, creating a wave of pure energy that can destroy anything in its path." She paused, her voice growing heavy. "But it requires a sacrifice. Someone must stay behind to focus the energy, and they ... They don't survive," Marcus finished. "No, they don't." The bridge fell silent, except for the sound of distant explosions and the crackle of damaged systems. Marcus stared at the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. "How many people would you need?" he asked. "Just one, if they have." "The proper training. A member of the royal family, someone who can channel the crystal spirits. You. Me." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but firm. "No, Marcus, it's the only way. My people will die if we don't." "Our people," he corrected. "And there has to be another way." "There isn't. This is what I was born for. To serve, to protect, to sacrifice if necessary." Lyra turned to face him fully. "You taught me that strength is measured by how we treat those who cannot defend themselves. Well, those people on the planets below cannot defend themselves. I can. Lyra ... Will you help me?" she asked. "Will you help me save them?" Marcus looked at her, this alien princess who had become so much more than a prisoner. In her luminous eyes, he saw courage, determination, and something else. Something that had grown between them during their time together. A bond that transcended species and circumstance. "There is another way," he said suddenly. "The crystal resonance requires one person to focus it, yes? But what if that person wasn't alone? What if they had help?" "What do you mean?" "Human technology. Our neural interfaces. If I could link my mind to yours during the resonance, share the burden ... It's never been tried. The feedback could kill you, or it could save us both." Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his stern features. "Besides, I'm not letting you face this alone. Partners don't abandon each other." The word hung in the air between them. Partners, not captor and prisoner, not enemy and ally, but something deeper. Something that made them stronger together than they could ever be apart. "Partners," Lyra repeated, testing the word. "Yes, like that." The preparation took precious time they didn't have. Human technicians worked frantically to modify their neural interface. Technology, while ethereal engineers prepared the crystal arrays. The enemy fleet pressed closer, their bioweapons, reaching out like hungry tentacles toward the defenseless worlds. Asterisk. Finally, they were ready. Lyra stood in the center of the ship's crystal chamber, her hands pressed against the focusing stone. Neural interface cables snaked from her temples to the human technology that would link her mind to Marcus's. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, his voice coming through both the CUM system and the neural link. "Together," Lyra said. She opened herself to the crystal spirits, feeling their ancient power flow through her body. The sensation was overwhelming, like standing in the heart of a star. She felt her consciousness expanding, touching every crystal in the fleet, every ethereal mind willing to lend their strength to the cause. Then Marcus's presence joined hers, his human determination and tactical genius flowing through the link. Where she provided the spiritual connection, he provided the strategic focus. Where she channeled the power, he directed it with precision. The crystal resonance built to a crescendo, a wave of pure energy that swept through space like the breath of gods. The Devourer ships tried to flee, but the energy was faster than their biodrives. One by one, they simply ceased to exist. There, alien matter unable to withstand the focused will of two species united in purpose. When the last enemy ship was destroyed, Lyra collapsed. Marcus caught her, his own body shaking from the neural feedback. They held each other in the crystal chamber, both alive against all odds, both changed by what they had shared. "The fleet is secure," came Admiral Lishan's voice over the cone. "The threat is ended. All ships report. Princess, what have you done?" "What needed to be done," Lyra said, her voice weak but steady. "Admiral, I want you to witness something." With Marcus's help, she stood and faced the communication array. Her people's faces filled the screen, dozens of ships' crews watching. Their princess with amazement and concern. "My people," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Today we fought beside humans and found them to be brave, honorable, and true. We shed blood together in defense of innocent lives. We shared our deepest secrets and our greatest strengths." She looked at Marcus, seeing understanding in his eyes. "Today, I choose to bind our peoples not through conquest or surrender, but through partnership. I choose to stand with Captain Marcus Chun, not as his prisoner, but as his equal." "Princess," Admiral Lishan said carefully, "what are you saying?" "I'm saying that our species are stronger together than apart. I'm saying that the old ways of fear and mistrust must end." She took Marcus's hand, their fingers intertwining. "I'm saying that I choose to be queen, not through birthright alone, but through the bonds we forged together." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, Admiral Lishan began to smile. "Princess Lyra," he said formally, "by the authority of the Crystal Throne and the witness of our ancestors, I recognize your choice. You have proven yourself worthy of the crown through courage, wisdom, and sacrifice." "And I," said Admiral Sarah Chun, Marcus's second-in-command, "by the authority of the Human Federation and the witness of our fallen comrades, welcome Queen Lyra as an equal partner in the governance of our alliance." The ceremony that followed was broadcast across both civilizations. Lyra stood on the bridge of the Defiant, wearing a crown that combined human and ethereal craftsmanship. Marcus stood beside her, wearing the ceremonial sash of a royal consort, a rank that had been created specifically for him. "My people," Lyra spoke to the cameras, her voice carrying across light years to reach every human and ethereal citizen. "Today marks not the end of our separate histories, but the beginning of our shared future. We are no longer two species divided by fear and misunderstanding. We are one people, united by respect, cooperation, and love." She looked at Marcus, her partner in all things. "Together, we will explore the stars. Together, we will defend the innocent. Together, we will build a civilization worthy of the sacrifices made to create it." The cheers that followed echoed across the galaxy, the sound of hope being born from the ashes of ancient hatred. In the years that followed, the human ethereal alliance would become legendary, a beacon of cooperation in a universe often torn by conflict. But it all began with a simple choice. A human captain who chose mercy over vengeance, and an alien princess who chose partnership over pride. They had expected to be enemies, but they chose to be something greater. They chose to be partners. They chose to be equals. They chose to build a future worth fighting for. And in the crystal chambers of ethereal ships and the metal corridors of human vessels, children of both species would grow up hearing the story of the princess who expected enslavement but found a crown, and the captain who offered not conquest, but partnership. The story of Queen Lyra and King Marcus, who proved that love was stronger than fear, and that understanding could bridge any gap between peoples determined to find common ground among the stars. Asterisk.